in case the recorders fail, you will have backup. If anyone it's easy for you, that's great. If it messes up your internet, forget it. If it's too hard, forget it. All right. So here we go. Let's jump right into it. And as always, my friends, feel free to chime in, thoughts, questions, ideas, as always you'd like, whatever you'd like, as always. And, you know, if you're feeling a little bit reserved, held back, insecure, self-conscious, so pour yourself your favorite alcoholic beverage, knock it back, and then ask your question. That's what alcoholic beverages are here for, to open you up to ask the questions that really you need to be asking. The rabbis teach that lo habaishan lomed, that the shy person does not learn. Don't be shy. If you need to ask a question, you ask that question. Either speak up or put it in the chat. I see most of the chats. If I ignore it, it's because I'm either ignoring you or because I missed it. So it could be one of the two. I don't know. All right. So, yeah, thank God I've been blessed just now. I got back from my cousin's wedding just now, a couple hours ago. So I'm in good mood, good spirits. It was really an awesome wedding in the middle of the country. And thank you. Yeah, good times, good times. So anyway, he came out with the Alabama theme song. So not Sweet Home Alabama, but the college. Anyway, here we go. Okay, so today we're talking about the Passover Haggadah. We want to get some deeper insights into the Haggadah of Passover. And before we start, I just realized I put on the heat before because it was a little cold, but now I'm going to be boiling. So just give me 1 second, and literally a second. And we're back. And so we're going to talk about the Haggadah. And so, as always in Passover, you should understand any holiday, as we've been speaking about here, this is for those of us who are in this weekly crash course in Kabbalah that we're doing over here. We've spoken previously about the idea of names. And really the essence of anything is captured in the name. Just like the word name in Hebrew is shem, related to the Hebrew word sham is there. Because in the name of the thing lies the there of the thing, and the name of the thing lies the purpose, the goal, the destiny, what the thing is really here for, what it's really all about. So if you want to understand what Pesach is all about, if you want to understand what Haggadah is all about, if you want to understand what the Seder is all about, we are going to need to get into like just those words, and that's going to open up the idea. And then from there, we're going to be able to just go through the Seder, different steps and things like this, different parts of the Haggadah. We'll see what we can get to in the time we have today. So first is understand what Pesach is all about. They say Pesach, how they translate that into English a lot of times, they'll call it Passover. And so we know this is the story about how in the Jewish people, the times of the 10th plague of the killing of the firstborn, and God passed over the house of the Jews when he was doing this whole let's get rid of the firstborn thing, right? And he only got rid of the Egyptian firstborn. When he passed over the houses, he saw had the blood on it from the lamb, which is where we get mezuzah from. Okay, awesome. However, just like that is true, and that is true on the surface level, there's a deeper understanding of this as well. The idea in Passover holiday is, by the way, any holiday. The idea is that it's called a holiday because it is a holy day. It means that there is something real going on there right now. It's not just a remembrance. It's not just a Memorial Day. Sorry, my friends, this is not a sale. Okay, it's no Memorial Day. It's not just that we're remembering something once was. Let's do some rituals so that we can remember back in the day. No. Holiday is a holy day. There's something real going on here right now. The idea is that the way the calendar works is kind of like not a circle, because it doesn't happen exactly the same way every time, but also not a straight line because different times there is a true cycle of the events. There's a true energy in the air for each holiday, and so they call it a spiral, right? It means to say that the energy of that thing comes along. The energy of that time of the year comes along at every particular moment, right? And actually, Noah, you were just asking me about this. Perhaps we'll go through the different times of the year, the different calendar times of the year. But for now, let's just stick with Pesach. right? And that is the Passover time of the year is a time of what's called Passover. That on Seder, every year on Seder night is considered to be there's a passing over going on, but spiritually, a passing over of levels that normally we're involved. When we're involved in life, we can experience the level that we are at. However, on Passover night, all the gates are open. There is a passing over of levels, and you can experience something much higher. You can connect to something much higher than where you're really at, right? And so according to Kabbalah, this is kind of like the highest night of the year. The opportunity to open up a vast door of potential in your life is there before you. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to hold that level, right? What goes up must come down. But when you and then we're going to talk, for those of us who are continuing here, we will talk about that. But the Passover night, that night on its own is opening massive gates and opportunities and reaching hopefully higher levels than we're really at practically. So this is the passing over that's actually going on here in a spiritual place, and this is talked about in the works of Kabbalah and the Arizal. Okay, so now that's Passover. Now on Passover night, also you find that we're going to do something called the Passover Seder. And the Passover Seder is very interesting because Seder means order. Yet if you look at what we're celebrating here, you look at the story of the Jewish people leaving Egypt, it's anything but order, right? It's anything but order, right? Order is that there's a natural way of things. There's a natural rule. There's a natural order of things. However, we're finding that the Passover Seder doesn't work that way, does it? Right? We're talking about a story where Dam, Tzfardeya, Keenum, right? The blood, the frogs, the light, all these different things that happen. You have water turning into blood. You have hail falling down with fire from the sky. You have all this crazy stuff going on. There's splitting of the sea. Beyond, it's things that are happening that are totally out of order, right? So why do we call this night, when we're talking about it, order? So one of the Hasidic masters known as the Sfas Emes explains that this is because for the Jew, beyond order is order. That's the way it works. That we see that the Jewish people, they are operating in a way that the rest of the world doesn't operate, right? The fact that we're here today as Jews, right? Simply the story of survival of the Jewish people. The idea that we can pop around, bounce around between different nations, and at the end of the day, we don't end up assimilating, right? The fact that Jewish people are here, they're an eternal nation. Not only that we're coming back to the land of Israel in a way that's unprecedented, that a people should be exiled all over the world, different four corners of the globe, all over the place, the Arabic countries, the European countries, all over the place. And they managed to somehow, some way, stick around, have Jewish identity, have Jewish practice, and then come back in the land of Israel in order to resell their land after 2,000 years of exile. Dude, we just accepted, we're for granted, hey, you can go to Israel and you can go on a birthright trip and you can just show up here and anytime you want. And it's land of the Jews, go visit the Kotel. That's not a given. That's not a given. Matter of fact, not only is this unique in history, a story that's never happened to any people, any people at all, nothing close to it has happened. Right? Not only is that true, but also it's predicted before in the Tanakh. Also in the Jewish Bible, it's said beforehand. We read the Jewish Bible, it's yeah, okay, of course Jewish people are going to come back. Okay, right. But it's hold on a second, this was said before the Jewish people came back, right? 150 years ago, you can imagine what we have here now in Israel, right? And so this is the idea that we are part of the story. You should wake up in the morning and be holy cow, look at me. I'm a Jew today in the year 2018, in the year 5778. That's freaking miraculous that I'm even here as a Jew. And the fact that we have the opportunity to be in the Holy Land, wow, that's beyond. So anyway, this is the Jewish people, right? And the fact that we managed to be not only surviving, but the fact that we influenced the world around us, even though we were in a state of exile, even though we were in small in number, even though we didn't have the power, right? Nevertheless, you see, normally the way it works is you have you have a minority, and the minority assimilates the majority. You have the majority has power, and the minority assimilates the majority and more or less disappears, right? They take on the ideas of the majority. Here, you see, with the Jewish people, it didn't work that way. The Jewish people, wherever they go, right, they're just involved learning their Torah. They're not even preaching, right? They're just involved in doing their thing, live in their little ghetto, live in their little shtetl, do their thing, learn Torah, teach it over to their kids. They learn Torah. Right? And then the non-Jewish nations that are hosting them, when they meet the Jews, they're pagans. and they laugh at them, and they argue with them, they spit at them, they persecute them, they fight with them. And then a few hundred years later, by the time the Jewish people are leaving or being thrown out, the non-Jewish host nation, with all the power, with the majority, with all the influence, nevertheless, the non-Jewish host nation has tossed in their idolatrous alternatives and incorporated into their lives that there's a God who gives the Torah to the Jewish people. Now they still want to eat their cheeseburgers. So like, okay, Jesus came along, he said that's all right. Okay, fine. That doesn't bother us too much, since that's not the point. The point is that they toss in their ideology, basically, by and large, for essentially the Jewish ideology and Jewish approaches to things. And so this is a miraculous thing, and this is the way the Jewish people this is Jewish history. And so we're seeing that the Jewish history is beyond Seder. That is the Seder of the Jewish people. You see the hand of God in the story, even if you don't see it. It's hard for you to see in the little details, but you take a look at the big picture, it's like, hold on a second, how on earth did this happen, right? How on earth did this happen? And so that is called the Yad Hashem, the hand of God at work in Jewish history. And what do you know it? There are actually 14 stages in the Passover. Seder 14 is gematria, the numerical value of the word yad, which means hand, because the idea is to be able to see God's hand in this situation. Okay, so this is the Passover Seder. Now, on the Passover Seder, we also read from the book we are reading from is called the Haggadah. Why is it called the Haggadah? So I'll tell you. The main mitzvah, the main commandment that is here, that we have with us today, that we have right now, that is relevant for the Jewish people, is the verse which says, "V'higadat levincha." You should tell over the story of the Jewish people living in Egypt. You should tell over Jewish history. You should transmit Judaism to your child on Passover night. Now, let's just be clear. There are other mitzvot on Passover night, right? We got Matzo, we got Maror, we got, really the prime one is Karban Pesach, Paschal Lamb, which is not, unfortunately, right now, at the time we do not have the Beis Hamikdash, the time we do not have the temple in Jerusalem, that is something that we do not do. We do things that as a memory to it, but as a statement to it, a statement that we are looking to have it, but it's something that we don't do, right? However, there are still many mitzvot that are relevant. In particular, the mitzvah, probably the prime mitzvah of the night, is to tell over the story of the Jewish of Judaism to your kids, right? And by the way, it doesn't just apply to kids, primarily to kids, but also to others. Right, and also if you're by yourself, you could tell over the story even to yourself, or have the higher side of yourself tell it over to the lower side of yourself. Right. So this is that aspect. This is one of the main aspects of Passover. Now, of course, you can say that like every day it's good to transmit Judaism, absolutely, but particularly on Passover night, this is the day where it's exemplified to pass over Judaism, right? You have this all the time. Every day is a good day to return to God, right? But in particular, Yom Kippur is known as a time for returning to God, Teshuvah, right? So the same thing here. Every day is a good day to transmit Judaism. In particular, though, when we're talking about Passover, that is the day that exemplifies the concept of passing over Judaism, Jewish history, Jewish tradition. That is one of the things that Passover night is for. And the verse for it is, like we just said, "V'higadat levincha," tell it over to your kids. So we have to understand, though, if we take a look at this verse, we find something very interesting. When we say tell it over to your kids, there are different ways in Hebrew to say the word say, to say the word to tell over, right? I'm going to give you 4 right now off the top of my head. Omer, which means to say, ledaber, which means to speak, lesaper, which means to tell over a story, and lehagid, which is to also means to tell, right? So certain things, if there are 4 different with me. Firstly, can you hear me? I got a little thing that my internet's unstable. Can you hear me? Are we good? Are you cool? Are you with me? Write me something. Tell me. Yes. Okay, good. Okay, let me know if it's no good, and we're gonna have if it continues to be no good, we'll have to change up something with the internet. But okay, so so um, so there are these four different words for telling over, for teaching, for saying, for speaking. These four different words, they obviously mean something different, or else we wouldn't have four different words to say. You understand? So Omer means to speak, but to speak softly. Ledaber means to speak sternly, right? Give you a commandment, right? It speaks sternly and strongly. Lesaper means to tell over a story. It's story time. But lehagid, to tell over, lehagid is from the word gid. Gid is like a vein, V-E-I-N, right? It's like what your blood is running through, right? So when you're telling over someone with the word gid, lehagid, it's not only just, I'm not just telling you some random thing. I'm telling you what my life force is all about. I'm giving you over the blood running through my veins. I'm giving you over what my life is really all about, what my purpose is, what I'm focused in on, what I'm passionate about, what's really the only thing that's really meaningful to me, the only thing that's really meaningful in life, the only thing that which goes on, it's what I'm passionate about, right? So this is the word la'agid, and so this is what Haggadah is all about. By the way, this is also the word gid is gimel. La'agid, gimel dalet, gimel dalet. Gimel is from the word ligmol, which is to give. Dalet from the word dal is poor. It's the give. It's the person. Also, if you look at the shape of gimel, it's also like a person stepping forward. If you can look at that shape. But anyway, it's this concept of giving over to the one who does not have, for the one who's open to receive, right? And so this is the idea of what we're trying to do, give over a certain passion, give over what our life is all about. So it's not just some random telling, it's not just some speaking softly, it's not just some giving some command. I'm giving you over with passion, right? I'm sharing what is important to me. And so this is what this night is all about, right? Masha yotzei min halev nechnas el halev. I forget if that's the right phrase, but that which goes out from the heart is that which that enters into the other person's heart, right? So this is what's going on here. Let's go through a little bit of the Haggadah. You find that we start off, throughout the night, we have 4 cups of wine, right? I told you guys I had a wedding this evening. So you see, I got my practice in. I already got started early. I was already preparing for Pesach tonight. Okay, so 4 glasses of wine. Now let's understand one of the reasons why we have 4 glasses of wine. One of the reasons we have 4 glasses of wine is because there are, right, when we go ahead and we have these cups, right, there are concept of a kiddush, right, there's a concept of sanctification. And we know also there are 4 things that the Jewish people did that kept them, that through those 4 things, they were able to be merit to stay separate from the Egyptians and be able to leave Egypt. Okay, those 4 things are that they kept a separate Jewish way of dress, a Jewish language. They didn't talk trash about one another, no slander, no lashon hara, and also they didn't have willingly inappropriate relationships with the Egyptians. Right? 4 things sanctified them, separated them, put them on a higher level from. Or at least kept them distinct, I should say, from the Egyptians. So corresponding to that, we have these 4 cups of sanctification, these 4 cups of kiddush, these 4 cups of holy glasses of wine. Okay, now, I'll give you another idea. Also, these 4 cups correspond to the 4 exiler nations of the Jewish people. Meaning to say that throughout history, we have that there are 4 nations that have exiled the Jews. Historically, they all have their roots spiritually in Egypt. Egypt is the original exiler nation, but within the root are the branches, right? And those 4 exiler nations that are the quote-unquote branches in my little root branch dynamic are Babylonia, Persia, Greece, and Rome, right? Babylonia destroyed the first temple, and the first temple that stood here. So they brought down kedusha, they brought down holiness. So the Jews, so corresponding to them, we have that original cup, that first cup, which is in the Kadesh section, right in the beginning of the Haggadah, because we're trying to show sanctifying, right? The second cup, which is not just a coffee shop, but also one of the cups of the Haggadah. The second cup happens towards the end of the Magid section, when we're telling over the story of the Jewish people and Jewish survival. And then there's a cup. That cup corresponds to the Persian exiler nation. The Persian exiler nation is a nation that we talk about overcoming during the Purim story. In the Purim story, we see that what the Persians were after, what Haman was after, was destroying all the Jews. It didn't matter. You keep Judaism, you don't keep Judaism. If you're a Jew, off with your head. He was planning a one-day genocide. He was a Hitler character. He did not care about your practice. He cared if you're Jewish. So he was just after trying to kill all the Jewish people. And so Magid, which tells the story of Jewish survival, is against that against is to overcome the spiritual energy of that nation which tried and perhaps spiritually tries to destroy us. The third cup is the cup that we drink at the time of Birkat Hamazon, when we're benching, when we are saying the blessing after the meal that we have later on the Seder. So the Jewish people, the commandment to say the Birkat Hamazon, the blessing after the meal, comes from a verse in the Torah which says that you should eat and you should be satisfied and you should bless. And the Jewish people were like, hold on a second, when exactly are you satisfied? When is enough that you're actually satisfied? So the Jewish people were actually were even more particular about making that blessing, and said, look, if you have a certain amount, if you have like an egg's worth or olive breath or whatever, so then that's enough already. We're going to bless on that, right? I mean to say that they were nth degree. They increase holiness, if you will. So for this reason, I see why that keeps happening. Because something happened on my phone, if an alarm goes off, and then I see that the internet connection is a little bit unstable. So don't worry, it's not the internet connection. It's if everything else, if it only happened twice, then we're okay. Okay, you guys with me? Someone send me a line that everything's okay in the chat, and we will continue. Awesome. So, where were we in the story? So yes, so this third cup, so we see that there was like an increase in, so to speak, in holiness. So this corresponds to the Greek exiler. The Greek exile nation, their attempt was a spiritual attempt to spiritually bring down the Jewish people. It wasn't just like the Persians wanted to kill the Jewish people. They wanted to spiritually bring down the Jewish people. How is this the case? Well, we see that in the Greeks were the ones in the Hanukkah story. And the Hanukkah story, there wasn't like the story in Purim. The story in Purim, they want to just kill all the Jews no matter what your religious observance level. However, the Hanukkah story was the first religious persecution in history, where it wasn't just, I'm going to kill those Jews. It was like, hold on a second. You Jew, you pray, whatever. Oh, you go to the temple. Hold on. Just put a little Zeus in your temple and we're cool. You know what I mean? I don't bother you. Just you're gonna be Jewish, but like don't be so Jewish, don't be such a fanatic. Only the Jewish God. Listen, Zeus is in now, man. He's this is what it's all about. You don't be old fashioned. Get a little Zeus in there. You know what I mean? What's your problem? Don't be a hater. All I'm saying is give peace a chance. Include my thing. Aren't you open minded? And so of course it's like, no, sorry, I'm gonna do my thing. What? No, off with your head, right? So it was a religious persecution. They started outlawing religious laws. So if you were a Jew and you just drop the whole Judaism thing, then you're cool. Hang out with us, come, let's do sports or something. Let's throw a discus or something. But so we see it was a spiritual attack. So corresponding to that, we show where we increased spirituality. They tried to decrease spirituality. We're showing where we increase spirituality. We're not only we just say the blessing only when we are completely satisfied, but also even if it was a certain level of satisfaction, then we already said the Birkat Hamazon, the blessing after the meal. And then you have the fourth cup. The fourth cup happens later when we are talking about the Jewish people's ultimate salvation, when we, God willing, will come out of the Roman exile, which technically we are still in the Roman exile. Don't let these beautiful buildings of Jerusalem stone fool you. Technically, according to Judaism, we are actually still in exile. As long as there's no temple in Jerusalem, we're still in a state of exile. We're still in a spiritual state of exile. And so that is what we call the Roman exile, because they destroyed the second temple. We're still waiting for its rebuilding. And hopefully we're working towards its rebuilding with every mitzvah that we do, every good deed we do. And so corresponding to that, we have this fourth cup, which talks about all the nations that are coming up against the Jewish people, that Hashem should go ahead, God should go ahead and take care of them. So And it talks about Elijah the prophet, right? You know, you have the whole story. Elijah the prophet comes in and all of that. Why is Elijah? What's Elijah the prophet all about? Well, one of the things is he's supposed to be the one who goes ahead and kind of announces the arrival of Mashiach, the arrival of the Messiah. So it has to do with future redemption of this fourth exiled nation known as Rome or known as Edom, right? Okay, so these are the 4 cups, okay? Cool. Kabbalistically, interestingly enough, there's also an idea of a 5th cup. We're not going to get into that right now. Maybe later we'll see. I don't know. I doubt we're going to have time. So since we're still in the first section and it's a half hour through. Okay, so moving right along. I want to share with you another, and that is that, so that's Kadesh, Urchatz, Karpas, things to talk about because it's something, one of the biggest, in my particular experience, most misunderstood sections of the Passover Seder. Why do I say this? Because what on earth is this Karpas thing doing here? Karpas is like you have this little vegetable thing right at the beginning, right? You have a little cucumber or some parsley or some potato. You might be wondering why potato is considered to be green. Well, a simple answer for that. In Russia, you didn't really have any green, so you just kind of threw in a potato, right? So, but really it's supposed to be ideally green, right? Maybe some celery. So what's Karpas really all about? Different interesting, funky answers are given, but in my particular perspective, those answers don't really fully answer the question until I saw this one answer. Rabbi Jugel told me that this is what Karpas is all about. And this answer fits better than anyone that I ever heard of. All right, so here goes. Karpas has 2 meanings. Karpas means a green vegetable, but there's also in Karpas, classically, actually also refers to a certain kind of fabric. And before we get into telling over the story of the Jewish people being redeemed from Egypt, we ought to understand a little bit, at least, why the Jewish people got into slavery in Egypt in the first place. Now, who was the first Jew to get sent down to Egypt? Anybody know? You can just hit me up on the chat, man. Just hit me up. Who was the first Jew to actually go down to Egypt? Let's see, test your biblical knowledge. Oh, nailed it. Noah. Damn. Dude, give someone else a chance. All right. So, Joseph, that is correct. Now, why did Joseph get sent down to Egypt? He got sent down by his brothers, if you remember the story, right? What happened? Why? The brothers were jealous of Joseph. In particular, there's one thing that kind of like captures the idea of the brothers' jealousy of Joseph. They were jealous because, you know, Joseph, I guess, had a certain kind of relationship with his father, with Jacob, which the other ones didn't have. And in particular, this is expressed by his special coat. You remember that Joseph had this special coat that his father gave to him, right? Some people refer to it as the technicolored dream coat. Perhaps you've heard of that. What is that really? What is that really all about? So one thing is, if you look in there's a certain Rashi. Rashi is a commentary, main commentary on the Torah. Rashi talks about how this coat was made out of something, a fabric called Karpas. So hinting to the idea that we should remember, right? That we should know why we went down to Egypt in the first place. That there was a certain level of jealousy. There's a certain level of discord within the Jewish people. That's what ultimately led to the Jews being sent down to Egypt. So before we start talking about how the Jewish people got out of Egypt, first we just hint a little bit how the Jewish people went into Egypt. And because it was this karpas, this coat made out of something called karpas, we hint to it with the eating of this vegetable that's also called karpas. And this is why we start off the Seder, essentially, more or less, right at the beginning. Before we tell over the story of the Jewish people in Magid, how the Jewish people got out of Egypt, we first start with how the Jewish people got into Egypt with karpas. Cool. Okay, I always like to share that one because I've seen many, many, many sources about this and different ideas. And I feel like this is the best and simplest one. Okay. Tov. So now we get a little bit to Kadesh, Urchatz, Karpas, Yachatz. Okay, Yachatz is breaking the matzah. What Yachatz is all about, ultimately we know that matzah is going to come back. We break that matzah and we hide the bigger half and we put it away for later in the Seder, and that's what we call later the Afikomen. Right? Now, for a second here, let's understand that this corresponds, when we eat the Afikomen later, in the section of Passover called, in the section of the Passover Seder called Safun, right? When we have it then, that is supposed to correspond to the Paschal lamb that we are not having, unfortunately. And that's one reason why we break it. Similar to how you break I actually heard this Torah tonight at this wedding that I was at, where one of the big rabbis in Israel was actually there, and he talked about this under the chuppah, under the wedding canopy, Rav Ariel. And so, anyway, the idea that when you just like you kind of like when we're having that celebration by the wedding canopy, we also break the glass under the chuppah, break the glass under the chuppah. Why do we break that glass? Some people probably know the reason we break that glass is because while we're having an awesome celebration of two people coming together and getting married, also we should know that that we're not supposed to. That we have to remember that our simcha, our joy, is not complete. Our joy is not complete because we're in a state of brokenness. We're in a state of exile. So even elements of joy in life, we can't let that overcome the national and world that national and world at large is there's a certain brokenness in that we need to have a certain state of not 100% happy, right? That we're missing something in the world. And so that's why we break the cup under the wedding canopy. And so similarly here also, we take this matzah that's going to be for the hinting to the Paschal lamb that we don't have, and we break it, right? And by the way, in particular, we break it and we put the bigger half away for later, right? And because that one of the ideas also, one of the deeper ideas is that this is talking about us. It's also talking about us, that our potential is hidden away, right? Like it's hidden away. And the point is that we have the bigger half there, right? Because the bigger part of us is hidden away from us. We think that our bigger potential is bigger than we could ever imagine. It's hidden away from us. So we should be aware and we should be awoken to that. So anyway, that is the concept of Yachatz Kadesh, Rachatz, Karpas, Yachatz, Magid. Okay, Magid. So we spoke a little bit already about the concept of Magid and how it has to do with Haggadah, how it has to do with telling over, and telling over means not just a random telling, but telling over what you're passionate about, what's the blood that's running through your gidim, the blood that's running through your veins, right? And so let's speak a little bit about this section towards the beginning, where it tells over a little story. It tells over a little story about how you had all these rabbis who come together, right? And they were having a Seder. And then the students came in. They were actually really probably hiding in a cave somewhere. And the students came in and told them that rabbis, that it's time for Krishma. The morning has arrived, right? And according to Maror of Prague, this is the source for time flies when you're having fun. But I want to talk to you a little bit more about this story because it's often like kind of like, okay, this is a nice story and it's like inspiring to tell us about this and like, okay, we should really get into the telling of the Passover story, but there's more to it than that. And that is a little known fact is that this story happened the first year after the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem. Could you imagine? After what it used to be like for 420 years, talking about this time of this temple. For 420 years, the second temple stood, and people would come every year to celebrate Passover together. They would do what's called Aliyah L'Regel. They would come up to Jerusalem from all over in order to celebrate festively. You had the Paschal Lamb. You had this all crazy stuff going on. Everyone came to experience godliness. And then the temple is destroyed. How the heck are you supposed to keep Pesach, Passover, the following year? Right? Imagine everything that you're going to do that's supposed to be positive is a reminder, is a little twisting of the knife in the back, right? Is a reminder of what we don't have as opposed to what we do have. So how are you supposed to deal with that? So what did all these rabbis do? So they all went, you see there's a list of rabbis there that they all went to this place called Bnei Brak, right? But where were they really going? They were going to Rabbi Akiva's house. And this Passover story was actually happening at Rabbi Akiva's house. And why did they go to Rabbi Akiva's house? Answer is because when the temple was destroyed, and some people might be familiar with this if you have a little bit of knowledge about some of these stories, but when the temple was originally destroyed, there's a story in the Talmud about how the rabbis were walking through the area of the temple, which was so super holy, but now with the temple's destruction, that kind of the holiness had left to a certain extent, and so all of the rabbis and the people who were there were crying, but Rabbi Akiva was laughing. And so people asked Rabbi Akiva, "Why? How can you be laughing? What do you mean? Why are you laughing?" And he said, "Why are you crying?" He said, "How can we not be crying? Look at this. Look, this is the place of supreme holiness, and now it's destroyed. You got animals running through it." And Rabbi Akiva said, "Right, but there was a prophecy that this might happen. There's a prophecy that this was going to happen, right? And just like there was a prophecy this is going to happen, you know what else? There's also a prophecy that there's going to be a rebuilding. There's going to be rebuilding. And so just like the first half of the verse, just like the part about the destruction came true, so we know also that the rebuilding is going to be even better. The building is going to be awesome, and it's going to happen, right? And so that's the person you want to be at that first Passover Seder, the one who has that perspective, right? He's the only one, right? He's going to be one of the Bnei Brak. What is Brak? Barak is lightning. That even when it's dark, you can still see that flash of lightning, right? That we should know that in the end, there is going to be that time of Kriyat Shema. There is going to be that time of getting to clarity on God, even in the darkness, even in that dark time. And so all of those rabbis gather at that time. And so it means that no matter what we're going through, no matter what our issues are in our own particular life, if we're going through some kind of darkness, if we're going through whatever it is we're going through, or some kind of struggle, some kind of non-clarity, to take to heart this idea to be one of the Bnei Brak, to be one of those people of lightning, to be able to attach ourselves to a flash of light, and to know that all hope is not lost. We're still here. We're still alive. There is tomorrow, right? There is today. There is tomorrow, and we can go ahead and live in that moment, right? To not get stuck in the past, right? For all the people who hate the past, how many people drag along the past into their present, right? So let the past be in the past. The past is what it is. Write it over there, right? The past has been written. Okay, let's leave it there. Let's start anew today. Let's make something new for ourselves today, right? Let's be the people we want. Let's have the attitude we have to want. Just because someone did something to us in the past doesn't mean we have to make that our present, right? And it takes removing ourselves to an inner extraction, a certain inner freedom. By the way, what's the Passover all about also? Concept of freedom, right? Just people leaving Egypt. We all have the Egypts in our life. We all have different. I say Egypt in Hebrew? Egypt is Mitzrayim. Do you know that Mitzrayim is actually from the Hebrew word Metzarim, which means boundaries, borders, constraints, that which is holding us back. Right? We all have those Egypts in our lives, psychologically, emotionally, right? On all levels. The Jewish people were enslaved in Egypt. It wasn't just a physical slavery. It was slavery on all levels: spiritual, psychological, emotional, physical. And the point is to bust out of those constraints in order to open ourselves up to choosing a higher way, a new way, a more truthful way, getting outside of the brainwashings of our society and their quote-unquote value system, and getting outside of the different emotions that are locking us in and the habits that are locking us in, and being able to get outside that and to access that Bnei Brak, access that lightning, access that energy, what do you call it, catching lightning in a bottle, being able to go ahead and say, okay, there is light at the end of that tunnel, right? We can go ahead and make a new today after whatever happened yesterday. And we don't have to get stuck in the future either. What are people going to think about me, right? Or how can I go ahead and take on some new perspective forever? Forget about that. We're talking right now. Right now. Can I go ahead and make a move? Do I want to go ahead and make a move right now? Okay, so let's talk about today, right? To say Shema today, to have some God clarity today. Yeah. So this is the story of that story of the right. Okay. So moving right along here, skipping forth. There's obviously a ton more. So we see that it says Keneged Arba Banim Dibra Torah, right? That corresponding to the four children, the four sons. The Torah spoke to these four children, these four sons, right? So Ben in Hebrew is the numerical value of 52. But if you multiply that by 4, again, there are four sons. If you multiply that by 4, you find you find that it equals the same numerical value as the original son of the Jewish people, which is Yitzchak, the first son, right? Abraham is the first Jew. Isaac is the first Jewish son, right? And so this is the idea that that really all of us are included, no matter where we are. All of us are included in that original son, in that original person, the original Jew called Isaac, called Yitzchak, and we all have a place. We all have a place. If you're here today as a Jew, you have to know, right? I mean, unless there's conversions involved and stuff, that's a separate conversation, obviously. But if you are here today as a Jew, if you are made it to here, you should know that there are people who got you here. It's not random, right? There has to be something called zchut avot. There has to be merit of your parents, great-great-grandparents, whatever, that merited you to be here. Because if you survived everything and still made it here as a Jew, and on top of all the different persecutions and whatever, also fought the temptation to assimilate throughout the generations, it's only in the merit of holy people that we got here today. Pretty much every Jew, if you search your ancestors, you'd see that if you're able to, sometimes we're not able to, sometimes we're not able to find out, but if you would be able to, you'd see that how you're descended from really great people who are known in the Jewish world, at least in the Jewish religious world, big rabbis, whatever. There's no way you made it here today without that kind of merit in your corner. So we all have a place, and a person should feel rooted in that place. A person should feel rooted, like, yes, this is really me. Yes, this is really who I am. Yes, this is really what I'm not just some random person here in this nation, but no, I have a real place. So we should know that, right? And so, let's see what else we got here. So now we're going to fast forward a little bit to, let's talk a little bit more about those 4 kids, right? Also, in terms of the 4 kids, you find it has the Chacham, the Rasha, the Tam, the She'enu Yodeh Lashol. Right, the Chacham, the wise one, he seems to be like the righteous guy, right? You have the Rasha, which means the wicked guy. He's a little bit of a rebel. And then you have the Tam, which is he's kind of wholesome. And you have the She'enu Yodeh Lashol, the one who doesn't even know what to ask. Now, interestingly enough, you find that people always think like, okay, listen, you got the Chacham, the wise one. He seems to be, again, the righteous guy. But then you think that it would be like, okay, then you have the kind of like neutral guy, the Tam, the She'enu Yodeh Lashol, which seems like he's kind of like out to lunch. And then you got this Rasha guy, because he's wicked, so you'd think he'd be last. But no, you find that he's second. He's right behind the Chacham. He's right behind the wise son. Why is that? And so one of the answers that's given is because the wicked, the one who seems to be wicked, the truth is he's closer than the other guys. He's closer to the Chacham, he's closer to the wise son than the other ones. Because when you have a chip on your shoulder, when you've got beef, when you've got issues, when you're fighting and struggling, whatever, it means really that you really do want to be connected, right? It really means you do want to be connected. Because if not, right, like it's like if you were to ask any marriage therapist, they'd tell you this, right? If you have a couple that shows up to the marriage therapist and they're fighting and bickering and going back and forth and whatever, it's like, okay, they're in the ring and boxing each other emotionally, fine. But like they care. They're invested. There's emotions there, right? When you have the couple that shows up to the marriage therapist and she says something and he's just like, yeah, whatever. I've had enough. Like, I'm not even interested. Okay, yeah, you win. Good. You're right. I'm wrong. Goodbye. Like that's the one. That's the couple that's ready. That's the couple that's ready. Like, okay, that's going to be much more difficult to get that couple back together, right? Because they're just ready. They've enough. They're done. They're checked out. The one that's still fighting, they care. They're involved. It's the same thing here, right? A lot of times we look at this one. And we think that, oh, this person, they're up and they're fighting, that they're showing up for a reason, right? Okay, connection a little bit unstable, right? If they're showing up, like I was saying a second ago, if they're showing up, they're showing up for a reason, right? They're not checked out completely, right? And so, okay, so then there's a question how to deal with them. Here it says knock out his teeth. We have to understand what that means. The teeth is arrogance. Teeth is arrogance. By the way, if you take out the word his, if you take the word in Hebrew, which is his teeth, shinav, and you take the numerical value of it and you knock it out of the word Rasha, the word for wicked son, it comes out, right? You take that numerical value, you knock it out of the numerical value for the word wicked, it turns out you get the numerical value of the word tzaddik, of the word which is a righteous person. So anyway, yeah, and for those of you who know what on earth I'm talking about, feel free to do the math and check me on it. All right. Okay, cool. So now we're going to fast forward a little bit. We're going to fast forward a little bit to the section of the Haggadah called Vehi She'amda Lavotenu, where we talk about, in Vehi She'amda section, we talk about an interesting thing. And that is that it says that in every generation there are people and nations who are trying to rise up to wipe out the Jewish people in every generation, right? Every generation, there are those who want to stand up to wipe out the Jewish people, which means to say, by the way, that even if you live in a generation where that didn't happen, that's because God's saving us from that happening. But there are people who are at work all the time to try to make that happen. And it says, "V'hakadosh Baruch Hu matzilenu miyadam." God ultimately saves us from their hands. And so the Baal Shem Tov, one of the founder of Hasidic movement, he explains that when it says God saves us from their hands, that's literal. Meaning he literally, from their hands comes the salvation. They're trying to do something bad to us. They be out of their hatred for us, ultimately comes the salvation. Where do we see this? In numerous occasions that we could easily point to, right? Let's just start off with the story of the Jewish people in Egypt, right? The Jewish people get out of Egypt by who? Who leads the Jewish people out of Egypt? That's Moshe, right? Where did he grow up? Who raised him? That was Paro, wasn't it? Right? Let's fast forward. Let's go to the Purim story. It's an easy one. Purim story. Haman, the arch enemy of the Jewish people, he builds gallows to hang Mordechai of the Purim story. What happens in the end? Haman, ends up getting hung on those gallows which he built to hang Mordechai. Right? And by the way, my friends, as recently, easily to see it, as recently as World War II, the Holocaust. It's well known and well documented that there was a time when the Russians were attacking the Germans, and the Germans, of course, had all these trains, as is well known, and they could have used these trains to send reinforcements to the front, the war front against the Russians. But instead, Hitler made the choice that what was more important was to kill some more Jews. And he used those trains, instead of sending them to reinforce that front and fight off the Russians, he sent them to kill Jews. In the end, the Russians came through on that front, and then that was the end of World War II, pretty much. It was a very important battle, right? And so out of his hatred for the Jews came the Jewish salvation, right? And so this is the idea that HaKadosh Baruch Hu matzilenu miyadam, that God saves us literally from the hands of those who are trying to get us by their own hands, right? Okay. By the way, again, my friends, feel free to chime in anytime. Thoughts, questions, ideas, whatever you'd like. Don't hesitate. But if you're hesitating, we will continue. Moving right along, we see, here's an important one. There's a line in there, I don't know if you'll find it. There's a line in there which talks about Vayhisham L'goy, that when the Jewish people were became a nation. By the way, it just goes to show you, the goy doesn't just mean a non-Jew, right? That's just colloquial. The goy is a word that means nation, right? Sometimes we're talking about the nations, okay, goy, but right? It's not a what's it called? It's not supposed to be like some kind of nasty word or something like that. Goy the Jewish people are referred to as goy in the Torah sometimes. Goy kadosh, holy nation. Okay, but anyway, so here's one example. Hisham the goy. The Jewish people were like a nation. It means to say that the Jewish people made sure, like we mentioned before, that the Jewish people made sure not to lose the name Jew. Right? Anyone who would, if you'd see a Jew, you wouldn't call it in Egypt. You wouldn't call the Jew an Egyptian, right? They had a separate name, right? And it's through this that we merit the redemption, because it's not natural for one nation to live under another nation. So and here's the thing, right? So today, what's most people's goal? Like if you think about most people here on this little chat here on this little video conference. Most people here are from the US of A, if I understand correctly, right? I'm just looking around as far as I know. So just in the Western world in general, right, like most people's goal is really to blend in. As much as they talk about finding their individuality, And we're all as hippies, talk about finding individuality, but they all dressed up pretty much the same. So that was interesting, wasn't it? So, but anyway, fine. So, so the goal of the goal of most people is to just be like everyone else, right? I mean, in the USA, you want to be looked at as a good American. And even in Israel, unfortunately, there's this sickness in the state of Israel that people want our nation to be viewed by all as another Western democratic nation, right? So they say for political reasons or whatever, but when you toss out what makes the Jewish people unique, and you try to be like everyone else, there's a spiritual rule, right? There's a well-known spiritual rule that I don't know who originated this saying, but it's very good. The Jew doesn't make kiddush, the non-Jew will make havdalah. Okay, kiddush means sanctifying oneself. If we're don't stand proud for Jewish values and what we're all about, even when it means times when we have to say, okay, we disagree with the non-Jewish nations around us or the Western world around us. If we don't make kiddush, if we don't sanctify the situation, so then the non-Jewish world around us will make havdalah. They will make the separation, right? And that is obviously not going to be nearly as pleasant. So, anyway, so the point is to be proud, to know who we are, to know what we mean, to know what we stand for, know what our values are, know where they come from, right? And to not be embarrassed or ashamed or to hide who we are. Okay, moving right along. We come now to just looking at my little Haggadah notes here. Okay. So, fine, we have the 10 makot. We can talk the entire time about the 10 plagues. Better not do that or else that'll be the end. All right, let's talk a little bit about Dayenu. Dayenu, interestingly enough, is you find that we go through the different 15 levels. Where's that quote from? Yeah, I don't know. I'm sorry, Katie. I don't know off the top of my head what the source is. I'll tell you what, if you find out who it is, okay, fine, Toronto, what's up, represent. If you find out, then feel free to let me know. I don't remember where it's from, but we definitely see historically that it is accurate. Is there so much the idea that Mashiach is going to come through the war of Gog and Magog? Shulman's iPhone, I don't know because I don't remember which idea you're talking about. So apologies for that. I don't know what you're referring to. Come to Gog and Magog. Mashiach's going to come to Gog and Magog, and yeah, okay, fine, maybe we have to see how it plays out. I understand. I do understand what you're talking about. That we're going to come. That we're going to be saved by his hands. Yeah, I got you. So thank you, Katie. So yeah, I don't know. We have to see how it plays out. Probably that's what's going to happen. There is definitely an idea based on this. Actually, yes, based on this, there is an idea that Mashiach is going to come from like knowing the civilization, being brought up at least in the civilization of what Gog and Magog is going to be. Just to clarify for those who don't know, this Gog and Magog thing is that there is an idea in the Tanakh, in the Jewish Bible, that there's in order that before Mashiach comes, that there's going to be like this massive, like 1 day crazy world war, and then like in the end, like the world's going to merge the following day with like, basically in a whole rubble except for the land of Israel. There's a whole buildup that everyone's going to jump and pounce on the land of Israel, and then in the end they wake up the next day, basically the ones who do wake up, and they crawl out from the whole the cave that has collapsed upon them, and they turn around, they see, hold on a second, the whole world was decimated and the land of Israel is floating over there, just like Noah's the Teva, the Ark of Noah was floating in the flood, and so anyway, the point is, and then people are going to wake up and realize like, hey, the God of the Jewish people saved the Jews, and then that's how Mashiach's going to come. Now, Mashiach does not need to come that way, by the way. Any painful or difficult story, prophecy in the Torah, the Tanakh, does not have to happen. Anything good has to happen. Anything that's painful and difficult does not have to happen. That's according to the Talmud. So this is that is called worst case scenario. So we're not looking for that to be the way that Mashiach comes, but that is worst case scenario. Okay. Anyway, so there is an idea that Mashiach will be raised in that kind of culture and society, but more than that, stay tuned. Stay tuned. We'll see. Okay, now the Dayenu section, we see Dayenu where we talk about recognizing you go through these different 15 things. By the way, just to clarify, you find that the first 5 have to do with leaving Egypt. The second 5 have to do with like miracles for the Jewish people. And then the last 5 have to do with actually connecting to God and mitzvot and doing positive things. But fine. But the point is that what I want to say that you see each level is talking about thanking God, and so we see that there's a Jewish concept of thanking God and not just on the big picture, but on all the details, And this is also the story of essentially the essence of the Jew. We find is to have gratitude and acknowledgement of God and any person who's helped us. And we see that this is the story. It's the first word out of a Jew's mouth in the morning. The first thing a person wakes up and they say, a Jew wakes up in the morning and thanks God for putting my soul back in my body, right? Putting my soul back in my body, right? There's an idea that God is holding our soul at all times, right? The idea is that a person could, God forbid, die at any time. You see that God could take the soul at any time. So it means that God's holding the soul in place in a person at any time. And so when a person gets their soul returned to them when they wake up in the morning, the idea is we are supposed to, we thank God for that. Matter of fact, it's the first word out of our mouth is the word thank. And so this also is represented in what a Jew is. How do you say a Jew in Hebrew? Right? Jew is from the Hebrew, Jew, Yehudi, which is Jew, is from the Hebrew name Yehuda, Judah. Right? Yehuda is from the word modeh, lahodot, right, which means to thank. And so at the root of what a Jew is, just look in the name, right? We talked about that at the beginning. And the name of this thing lies the essence of the thing. So we see the name of the Jewish people have been referred to as Jews. That means that at our root, our core is to thank God and to acknowledge God and to understand that God is the one who's making the world go round and then also making us go round. So there you have it. Okay. Oh, good. I don't know. I almost forgot this. But we got to go into now in the Haggadah, you find the section on Pesach, Matzah, and Maror. Pesach, Matzah, and Maror. There's an idea also. It says it in the Haggadah that anyone who doesn't mention Pesach, Matzah, and Maror at the Haggadah did not fulfill their requirement of their mitzvah to go ahead and to mention. You have to mention those things on Passover night. So let's understand a little bit deeper understanding of Pesach, Matzah, and Maror and what it's all about. Okay, hold on. But before this, I need a drink. L'chaim. All right. So now, okay, Pesach, Matzah, and Maror. Let's understand these 3 things. And there used to be, of course, so we used to eat them. Let's understand what 3 of them are, and what they're doing. Carbon. We'll understand this at the beginning. Oh, thank you very much for looking that up. Okay, very good. Okay, author of the Nefesh HaChaim, which is actually, in my opinion, probably the best intro book to Kabbalistic wisdom and ideas. Okay, actually, I think they even came out with an English version on that one. Good luck with that. Okay, so here goes. Ready? Pesach, Matzah, and Maror. Let's start what Pesach is. Pesach, you find that with Karban Pesach, the Paschal Lamb, that's what it's talking about here. Paschal Lamb exemplifies the concept of unity between God and the Jewish people. One way we see this is that it's all about this concept of unity and bringing together and oneness, right? It's supposed to be eaten whole in one house. It's a 1-year-old calf. It has no bones that are broken. Interestingly enough, it's supposed to be roasted as opposed to cooked, because when you roast something, the fire makes the meat kind of come together harder, whereas if something's cooked with water, it's kind of like can come apart. It's a lamb. Sorry, not a calf. It's a lamb because the whole body feels the pain of one limb in a lamb, according to Jewish sources. So it means to say that there's a certain wholeness, a certain oneness going on. It has to do with the oneness of God and the Jewish people. Now, due to this unique oneness and unique relationship of God and the Jewish people, you find that brings us to a state of matzah or a state of maror. Let's explain what I mean by that. Matzah is referred to as the bread of freedom, right? The Jewish people are leaving Egypt, and we took matzah with us. There is the bread of freedom. On the other hand, though, actually, you find that matzah is also referred to as lechem oni, which is the bread of affliction, bread of suffering, bread of poverty. So here's the question, though. The question is, like, hold on a second, is this bread of freedom or is it bread of poverty, right? And of course, the answer is, which one's right? Bread of freedom or bread of poverty? Anybody know? Nailed it, right? If they're both quoted as sources, I'm obviously not going to say one of them is wrong. They're both right. It's both legitimate sources. They're both right. So how can they both be right, though? Us. The Maharal of Prague, one of the famous Kabbalists from 500 years ago, explains that if you take a snapshot, just take a snapshot of a quick picture of a person who's poor, right? So there they are, and they exist, and it's just them. They're independent. They have nothing. There's nothing that they're attached to. They don't have a. They don't. The person got no home. That means they got no bills to pay. They don't have no bills to pay. They don't have any home to. They have to pay a mortgage for this month. They don't have any other possessions. Right. They're totally independent. So there's a certain freedom to that detachment. Right. Right. And there's certain something to that. Right. Like it says in Pirkei Avot, Ethics of the Fathers, that the more possessions you have, the more worries you have, which of course is the original mo money, mo problems. And so there's also another idea, right? And so let's stop there for a second. That is the concept of matzah, right? That there's a concept is a certain level of freedom, okay, and independence, okay? Now, that's when we make the right decisions, right? Because there's a Kabbalistic teaching that all the other nations of the world, there's an idea that whatever this means, just go with it for now. Do me a favor. That all the other nations of the world, for all the other nations of the world, they all have like this ministering angel above them, right? For the Jewish people, they don't have this ministering angel above them. It's just direct to God. Whatever that means, I'm not going to get into it now. Right? So that means then that if the Jewish people are doing what they're supposed to be doing, they're going to be attached to God. No other nation can touch them. But if they're not going to be doing what they're supposed to be doing, and they kick God away, so then what are they left with? They don't have a ministering angel. They got nothing. Right? And this is why you find that the Jewish people can be constantly kicked around and enslaved and all this kind of stuff. Because we take them over pretty easily. And that's the Maror side of the deal. So Jewish people can be above everything and free from everything. That's the matzah side of the deal. But there's the Maror side of the deal, which is if the Jewish people are not doing what they're supposed to be doing, then easily they can be taken over in this way. And that's the bitterness, the Maror side of the deal. And so both of these are rooted in the fact, in the Paschal, in the unique unity of God and the Jewish people. So there you have it. You hear that idea? So that's the Pesach Matzah Maror system. Okay, fine. I'm going to give you also another deal of matzah. Should we talk another idea of matzah? I'll give you one more matzah, yeah. So in the Zohar, one of the original Kabbalistic books, how is Paschal Lamb related to Pesach? Oh, okay, fine. So question of how is Paschal Lamb related to Pesach? What's the connection? What's going on there? So in the original Paschal Lamb happened in Egypt. Okay, so let's actually talk about this a second. Actually, this is great. And actually it feeds right into what I wanted to say about matzah. So really good job and great timing, Katie. So here goes. Okay, let's understand that the Egyptians, one of the things that they worshipped was a system of astrology, right? That was the order. That was their order, right? We're doing our order, which is above the natural. Their order was the natural. It's funny now because nowadays people are like, yo, spiritual astrology. And just people are like, yeah, that's just part of the natural world, right? Truth is really, if you want to look a little more deeply according to Judaism, it's kind of like a go-between between the natural world and the spiritual. But it's definitely not considered to be godly and holy. It's part of the way the system runs. And so each month has its own, you want to call it energy or whatever. But the truth is that's not considered spirituality. It's not considered holiness. Considered part of the system. Is considered a way by which the energy of whatever God wants to put into the world comes down into the world. So now the thing is though, when what the Egyptians and numerous other nations would do would be attribute real power to this astrological system, right? And in Judaism, we have a word for this that is called idolatry, right? If you're attributing power and independence to a system or to something that doesn't have power and independence, something, i.e., something other than God, you are now worshiping idolatry. Okay, so at the top was is this month of okay internet of this system was this month that we're in now, Nisan. Okay, I forget the astrological equivalent, maybe Aries, I forget. But anyway, it was symbolized by a lamb or a lamb's head, right? That's like the energy of this time. And not only is the energy of this time, but this is the top month. So this is the strongest time. In particular, what's the strongest time? The strongest time is the 15th, 14th, and 15th of that month, which is the middle of the month. It's when the full moon is out, right? Is when you have full moon. That is the strongest manifestation of whatever the energy of that month is. So, and we're talking about the first month root of the entire system, right? So that night in particular, the Jewish people go ahead and take this lamb, which basically was a god in Egypt. They basically worshiped this lamb. They go ahead and take the Egyptian god, which is an Egyptian god, which is supposed to be, the top of representing the highest point of their entire system of belief, and basically killing it in front of their face and sacrificing it to the god that is the one who runs this system of the astrological system, and that is the god that is G to the dash to the dizzy. Some people call him Hashem, whatever. There's a lot of names. So that's really what we're doing over here with this whole Paschal lamb thing. So this is what they do, and they on Paschal, what do? They go ahead and they shecht it. They do some kind of ritually slaughter the thing, and then they take its blood and they paint it on their doorposts. Right, and they paint it on doorposts, and the idea is that then whatever the plague, and that was the night when the plague of the 10th plague was happening, the plague of the death of the firstborn. And so when this plague was happening throughout Egypt, any house that had this blood on its doorposts of the Paschal lamb, God passed over those houses and didn't kill the firstborn in those houses. Right, that's where the name Passover comes from, actually. So that is the Paschal lamb. I hope that clarifies. And by the way, this is also now corresponding to this as well. In our lives, we have something called a mezuzah, which we put on our doorposts, which is also one of the things it's connected to the concept of divine protection, and also that we should know that there's a God also in our house. I hope that is helpful. Now, relating to this, I want to take this also to the next level, which is to also understand what matzah is all about. Because matzah, it is referred to in the Zohar. You're welcome, Katie. Matzah, thank you for asking the question. Matzah is referred to in the Zohar as machil demei hamnusa. What does that mean? How's your Aramaic, guys? Gotta brush up on it. Machil, ochel, that's food. Demei hamnusa means shel emunah, which means faith or faithfulness. Faith food. Matzah is referred to in the Zohar as faith food. What does it mean, faith food? Faith food means, because what's matzah? Matzah is the way you design it, the shape you put it in, that's how it comes out of the oven, right? That's how it comes out, right? Meaning there's nothing happening on its own, whereas opposed to leavened bread, there's rising going on. I don't know. I don't cook. I'm just, it's like I read it in a book. I don't know. So, and by the way, if you check this out, you'll know leavened bread, the stuff chametz, stuff we're not supposed to have on Pesach. What was the first civilization to actually have that stuff, to actually do that, to actually make that in their life, in their civilization? Was actually ancient Egypt. Google it, y'all. So anyway, where was I in the story? So what matzah is the way you was designed. It's clear who the designer was, because you see the way it went in is the way it comes out, right? And that's what's called faith food. This is the idea of seeing that Hashem is the one, and God is the one who's running the show, not some system, not God didn't wind up some clock and put it on a shelf and that runs on its own, or he stick it on some autopilot called the constellations or nature. No, God's running the show, and that's the message of the Matzah, is to see God's hand clearly. That's the message of the entire story of the Jewish people getting out of Egypt with these miracles, is that you should see God's hand clearly. Cool. Okay. Moving right along. Okay. Questions, thoughts, ideas? Anything anyone wants to say right now? Holla. No? Nothing doing. Fine. Oh, Noah hanging out for the end. All right, we'll see about that. I don't want to confuse people, Noah. That's the problem, you see? Maybe I'll send you something about it. I don't want to confuse people. 4 cups of wine. 4 cups of wine. For the 5th cup, I don't know. For the 5th cup, you got to show up in my Seder. Okay. Here we go. Fine. Fine. So then, you go eat some food, right? And you have Shulchan Aruch, which is good. Enjoy the meal. Don't eat that. I want you to eat and be happy, eat, drink, and be merry, but I also want you to not pass out and to finish the Seder. So, keep it easy. Take it easy there. Okay, so you have Hallel. You have something called Hallel Hagadol, biggest part of Hallel. There are 26 sections to the Hallel Hagadol section. Okay, look, there's a lot more to talk about, but I don't know how much we have. Since I'm being asked for it, maybe I'll give you the 5th cup thing. Okay, I'll talk about that. But before that, I do want to also explain this idea that the idea of opening the door, right? We open the door to Elijah, right? And it's because this last part of the Seder, the Hallel, the Nirtza, the end part of the Seder, this comes to usher in the true time when we'll merit to truly dance with God, which is, of course, the time of Geula Shlema, the time of the complete redemption of the Jewish people in the world. So this is the time that we publicize that Eliyahu HaNavi, Elijah, right, is going to precede the coming of the Mashiach. So we put this out there, and we say, so that's the story. So really, hold on a second. Okay, and cool. This is good. We did a lot. Thank God. Cool. Let's open up to questions. We're going to talk a minute we will talk about the 5th cup, God willing, okay? Just anyone have any questions or anything that they'd like to ask? Katie, thank you so much for asking before. If Katie or anybody else has any more questions, now is a perfect, wonderful time to do that. And then we're going to talk about the 5th cup because I was asked about it. Anybody at all? All right. Fine. 5th cup it is. You win. All right. There's a concept of 5th cup. Certain people hold by it. It's well known that Maror of Prague had a 5th cup. And so we should understand a little bit about it if we want to. Most people will probably not. Yes, sorry, just to clarify. Yes, the lamb's head is it, right. That's exactly right. Essentially, you could say that, right? Because the lamb's head represents the idolatry of the Egyptians, because it was essentially the head of the system. That was the concept of the lamb, or the lamb's head, was the root of the entire system that they believed in. The astrological signs detached from a infinite God, enlivening as the source of that system. So we knock off that system to show that there's a God running the show behind that system. There you go. Cool. So the idea is like this, just quickly about the fifth cup. Firstly, it should be clarified, but you find that all 4 cups, you make a blessing, blessing on the wine. In the fifth cup, you would not do that. Also, I'm also not clarifying for you when we take the fifth cup, so it still remains a mystery for you. There you go. But the fifth cup is essentially the cup that's used is the cup of Elijah. Let me explain. The fifth cup goes like this, that after we have the 4 cups of redemption, and by the way, also just in the verse, you find there's a verse in the Torah which says, that's the abridged version of the verse. That's me cutting out a lot of words in between. But this is known in the Jewish world as the 4 languages of redemption that are used within a couple of verses, talking about how God will take out the Jewish people from Egypt. Votzeti, I'll take them out. Veitzalti, I will save them. V'ga'alti, I will redeem them. V'lakachti, and I will take them to me to be a nation. Okay? Based on that verse, we have the 4 cups. That's the biblical reason why we have the 4 cups. I give you a few other reasons, a few deeper explanations, and complementary explanations, all true. But the original biblical verse as the source is that verse. That on each you have a cup based on each one of those salvation, those languages of salvation that God did for us. You have a cup corresponding to that. Okay. So after we have those 4 cups, which are all about redemption, we have a 5th cup, which makes the 4 cups all the more valuable, right? Because what would be the point of redemption without ongoing sustenance? And that's what this 5th cup is all about. The 5th cup is for the ongoing sustenance that God gives us, and specifically and especially in Israel, because it corresponds to a 5th word in those verses, which is veheveti, that God will bring us, right? Bring us to Him, bring us to the land of Israel. And so this is all about, having this cup is all about sustenance, it's all about parnasah, all about sustenance. And since that's the case, the idea is for the host of the Passover Seder to drink the cup, and for everyone else can be included in the mitzvah, right? The idea is that the abundance of sustenance kind of flows into the provider of the meal, the host of the meal, and then flows from there onto everyone else who's sitting there. If someone on the side, or someone else there also wants to have their own 5th cup, they can also pour themselves their own 5th cup. And this is also, and so this is the reason, by the way, since it's all about parnasah, since it's all about sustenance, this is also the reason for the minhag, for the custom to drink the cup of Eliyahu, of Elijah, as the 5th cup, because there's an idea, and this is going to be built on some previous knowledge that some people here may or may not have, so just bear with me, that Eliyahu is Eliyahu Navi. Eliyahu is the angel of the abundance of blessing, right? We know this because God gave Pinchas the covenant, the Brit Shalom, the covenant of peace, and the Talmud teaches that Eliyahu is Pinchas, and that the highest blessing is peace, right? Because it sustains all other blessings. Whatever blessing you have, you need peace to keep it around. And this is, by the way, why we always conclude all our prayers and blessings and stuff with a hope for peace, right? Shalom b'mamav always comes at the end, and if you look in the Shemona Esrei, the daily prayer, the last blessing is a blessing for peace, right? So anyway, so where there's Eliyahu, the idea is that there's blessing. Where there's Eliyahu, there's bracha, there's blessing, and therefore we take the cup of Eliyahu, who's all about bracha, who's all about blessing, and use it as a 5th cup, which is all about sustenance. So we apply the bracha of Eliyahu to our sustenance. Okay, for those who, there's a lot of information there. It's not so stand right away. That's what we have a recording for. Okay, cool. So hopefully, Noah, that is helpful. For anyone else, questions? Last questions before we call it over here. Questions, thoughts, ideas? Anybody? Cool. So I want to wish you all firstly a good cleaning. Secondly, we should be blessed to clean not only our external spaces but also our internal spaces. And we should be blessed to a Pesach that is kosher, a Pesach that is happy, Pesach that is rejoiceful, a Pesach that is liberating. And, you know, when we hear all that, if for those of you familiar with this movie called The 10 Commandments, the famous line is, let my people go, let my people go, right? But if you look at the actual verse, surprise, surprise, Hollywood's only quoting half of it, right? It's like, it's the original, I guess, hashtag fake news or something. And only there's one little half of it without bringing the proper context. If you look in the original Jewish verse, it's shlach et ami, send out my nation, send my nation, v'yavduni, that they should serve me, right? They forgot about that part because that didn't fit into the American July 4th Independence Day thing, right? So yes, there should be freedom, but the freedom is for a purpose, right? And you can be free from, but the real thing is that the real idea is you should be free from constraints in order to be free for, in order to use that freedom for that which is good. Use that freedom for attach it to that which is meaningful. So we should be blessed to this Passover for freedom from, and also ultimately got to recognize and to clarify what is our free from going to be free. What are we really going to be free for? We should find that right path, and we should attach to it and go after it with a passion. Can I get an amen? I got one. Okay. Thanks. So, be blessed. And Jordy, you stuck with us the whole time. You got to go sleep. And I want to bless us all that, take the blessings to heart. And if anyone has any questions or needs any help, anyone wants to sell chametz and doesn't know how to do that, anyone, anything like that, feel free to be in touch. We can get it done. There's even ways to do that online now. It's crazy. So I thank you for joining us, and I thank you for joining me, and I hope this is helpful. I hope you got some nuggets that you can, go with and share, and help you in your, hopefully good in your own life, and also good for those people around you. And feel free to be in touch about this or anything else. All right, keep on keeping on. Happy Passover from Jerusalem. Keep living, keep loving. Okay, I'm back. But have a great one. Bye.